Hello and welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Rahim Rahimtullah. We are at the DCAF conference on the security sector governance in Ukraine. Joining me now is one of the guest speakers of the conference and the Deputy Director of the DCAF, Dr. Philipp Fluri. Dr. Fluri, many thanks for joining us. Perhaps you could tell us, just to start, give us an overview of what this conference aims to achieve, the DCAF, the Democratic Control of the Armed Forces. Give us a little more insight into the mission of the organization.
Yeah, the organization, the Geneva Centre for the Democratic Control of Armed Forces, is a Swiss initiative, goes back to the year 2000, and it seeks to engage countries, either mature democracies or transition countries in transition to democracy, to engage in a discourse on best practices in the governance of the security sector. Security sector understood in a large sense, so it comprises defense, intelligence, the justice system, border management, police, and then all the oversight organs. So Parliament is important, the public sphere, civil society. We look into the role of the press, the media.
So, the organization, it's obviously very wide-ranging. You look at all aspects of defense. So it seems like Ukraine, in the current moment, it seems like your organization could have a role here across all sectors of the economy. It's trying to reform all of those parts.
Well, we've actually had a role for the last 15 years. Ukraine, along with 20 other like-minded nations, was a founding member of our organization in the year 2000. Now we have like 63 member governments of this intergovernmental organization on all continents.
How has, if it has at all, your interaction with Ukraine changed over the past, say, 2 years? But of course, we've had the invasion in eastern Ukraine by Russian forces. And of course, Ukraine's military has, as a result, come under much greater scrutiny and has actually been called into service in a way which we hadn't previously seen. Has that been an impetus for much greater interaction?
Well, we have a new government. We've had a new government for 2 years, roughly now, in Ukraine. Our cooperation with Ukrainian governments and civil societies has gone through different phases. It was certainly very intense during the orange years. It was then a bit less intense under the Yanukovych regime, and it has, to our surprise, not been as intense as we thought it would be under the present government. I think the reason for that is that the present government is trying to do things right. It's trying to establish and consolidate the rule of law. If you want to have the rule of law, you need to have laws. You have to have transparent, non-contradictory laws, etc.
So, does it seem that Ukraine has some things to do beforehand to lay the foundations before it can really get into serious reform of the armed forces?
Well, you could argue, obviously, that the creation of new laws or the adaptation of old laws is by itself a reform step which would in principle presuppose a vision of what the country's security sector or what the country itself would look like, say, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Now, that needs to be worked out first.
Yes, so we're still waiting for this long-term vision.
Yes, we're still kind of working on that, or rather we are waiting for the government to work on that. And I think along with ourselves, others have been waiting for that, which is, if you want, frustrating on the one hand, if you see yourself as a potential contributor to a discourse, a potential supporter of reforms. On the other hand, it is important, local ownership is very important. It's important that the new vision of Ukraine is developed by Ukrainians.
And so there's a place here for very much a unique perspective? Is Ukraine in danger from taking too much from other countries at the expense of developing its own path?
I think Ukraine has taken a decision to move towards European values, European and Euro-Atlantic values and practices. Now that you can decide, but then you still need to determine what that now means in the specific Ukrainian context.
Give us an idea of the scale of this project. I mean, does this mean dismantling everything that was built up during the communist era years and this transition to transatlanticism? How big is it? What do we give us, if you can, an idea of what that really entails?
It's a huge undertaking. Ukraine for a long time was happy to be a post-Soviet state. I'm not saying that every individual citizen was happy about that, but that seemed to be the consensus. We are a post-Soviet state. We're neutral. We're just out there, and if you leave us in peace, we will leave you in peace.
Yes, no effort was made, I would say, specifically to build up the armed forces or strengthen in any way in these years.
There was no clear mandate for the armed forces. The armed forces were some sort of a carryover from Soviet times. Every independent country needs an anthem, a flag, and some sort of an armed force, or at least border guards. So there was, and probably my Ukrainian friends would disagree with me, but there wasn't too much of a clear mandate for those armed forces. So they just existed. They tried to do all kinds of things, including peacekeeping, participation in peacekeeping operations, or international military operations under UN resolutions. So these were all good ideas, but they didn't really lead to a massive integration of, say, practices from the Euro-Atlantic area.
It sounds like maybe what we were lacking there is some kind of unifying force to bring this all together. Dr. Fluri, we're almost out of time, unfortunately. So perhaps just as a final thought, tell me, do you see now then that this is actually an opportunity for Ukraine? I mean, are they going to take it if it is? This is a chance for them to build their armed forces and create the institutions which heretofore have not existed.
Well, it's really a question of rebuilding the security sector, which has existed, but which was very much carryover from the previous regime. So yes, this is a window of opportunity. It's a window that will not always be open. It's a window which at this point is also being kept open by Ukraine's international partner, who have a very lively interest in these reforms to take place. But it will not always be open. So it's a race against time, and it involves much more than adaptation of the legislation. It involves training, retraining. It involves human resource management, or say an adaptation of human resource management. We may find out, or the Ukrainian leadership may find out, that quite a number of individuals hired in the security sector under previous premises are not able or willing or or both, to adapt to the exigencies of the new situation, and their solutions will have to be found.
Dr. Philipp Fluri, it sounds like there is plenty of work to do. It is a massive undertaking and will require change across a wide range of sectors. Unfortunately, that's where we'll have to leave our discussion today, but many thanks for joining us here.
My pleasure.
You've been watching Ukraine Today. We've been joined by DCAF Deputy Director Dr. Philipp Fluri. That's where we'll have to leave it today because we are out of time, but many thanks for watching and do join us again.